let's go ahead and begin. So our agenda for today is going to be to just start with some introductions, and then we're going to get an update from James Schwab with the Office of the Secretary of State. We're going to provide a quick update on what implementation is happening in the counties implementing the VCA. And then we're going to have our guest speaker, Mindy Romero and Laura Daly with the California Civic Engagement Project, introduce their vote center siting tool. And then we're going to have the last part of our call focused on talking about resources for public participation and public education. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Astrid Ochoa. I'm the Interim Executive Director for Future of California Elections. I'm joined today with my colleague Rachel Sherman, Project Coordinator for Future of California Elections, and she's going to be helping to field the questions, and we'll introduce some of the resources later on. I'd love to also introduce a bit about who we are. Future of California Elections, if you have not worked with us before, we are a statewide network of election officials, good government reform advocates, civil rights, and civic engagement organizations. Our mission is to modernize elections and expand participation, specifically looking at the lens of election administration. And so we've worked on projects like online voter registration. We've helped to establish state advisory boards on language and voters with disabilities as advisory bodies to the Secretary of State. We've worked on bringing plain language to voter information guides, among many other projects. And we felt that the implementation of the Voters' Choice Act really is an effort that is bigger than any one organization. And given our experience in working with government offices and advocates and civic engagement organizations, we started this initiative called Voters' Choice California to support election offices and communities implementing the VCA. And we hope that this space serves you to collaborate, to learn, to share information, and we are open to your input for future agenda items. And if you'd like to present on something, we really invite you to use this space as your own, again, to support county election officials and communities as they're implementing the Voters' Choice Act. We know that each group brings their own expertise and their lens to the work, and we really want to highlight and value that collaboration. And so we hope that you continue to join us. So a quick question. How many of you joined us on our last call on October 18th? That'll help us know how much background to give. And you see the live poll is in front of you. Go ahead and just click yes or no in front of you, and then you can see the live responses there of folks. So we have about an even number of folks that have that were in our call last time. So we'll give just a little bit of background, but let me learn a little bit more about who everyone is, and we can also share this information. So we're going to do one more question. Are you calling from a county that's implementing the Voters' Choice Act? Great. So we see a lot of people from Sacramento. We have 2 calling in from San Mateo, 1 from Napa, and many of us are supporters of VCA counties. Great. So this gives a good sense of who's on the call, and so we want to make sure that we're just aware, and I want everybody to feel like this coalition is for everyone, and so I wanted everybody to kind of see where folks were calling in from. So this is really helpful for us to know. So I assume that all of you have a good sense of the Voters' Choice Act and where we are, and so we've invited James with the Secretary of State's office to give us an update on the work that the Secretary of State has been doing and to provide kind of that overview, and then I'll come back and I'll give us an update. But thanks all for dialing in from all over the state. Appreciate you participating. with us today. And so, James, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. I'll give you the floor.
Great. Thank you, Astrid, for the introduction and for organizing the call today. Again, my name is James Schwab with the Secretary of State's office. I'm the lead for our agency's efforts to implement and oversee implementation of the California Voters' Choice Act. So I'll run through some of the activities that we have currently underway to oversee implementation and work with the counties and stakeholders. I'll start off with, we actually received $250,000 in the state budget to assist with education and outreach at the county level. So we plan to spend roughly $200,000 of that money for direct county assistance, so that they can use that for education and outreach to their voters. We'll then use the remainder of the money for translations of materials that we produce for all counties, as well as the creation and design of education materials. So we plan to provide direct support to the county with that state money, as well as create our own materials and PSAs that we can provide to all the counties that are going. We also currently have 2 videos in production to educate the public and the counties around the VCA. The first is sort of putting a face to the VCA. So there's interviews with the county election officials that are adopting the VCA, the Secretary of State. The video includes a summary of the VCA, as well as discussion from the county election officials about the work underway to work with the public and seek community input. And the goal of that video is to get folks to come to our website to get more information about each of the counties, when I'll talk about the website a little more later on. We also have another video that's going to be an animated video, and it's going to be a summary of the Voters' Choice Act that folks can share on social media, online, through email, and just a pretty plain language, easy to understand video that gets you a nice overview of the process. And so those, the animated video we plan to have finished up by the end of the year, and the first video sort of putting the faces to the VCA should be done in the next couple weeks. We're also revamping our website, or our webpage for the VCA. Currently it's just a one-pager summary of our efforts. We're going to create more portals specifically for folks to sign up to get updates from our office, to find a summary of the VCA and links to the legislative history of it. Another portal to find county-specific information, including the election administration plans and education and outreach plans that our office is required to post on our website according to the Voters' Choice Act. And we also have a portal that will be a place for resources and toolkits for community organizations and the counties to use to reach out to their communities, whether it's social media memes, toolkits for starting up a language advisory committee. We'll have a page for all that to be home to. We're also having conversations about how to coordinate statewide education, because there's some counties that are going to the VCA, and there's other counties that are not. And making sure that there's no, I think what people are calling spillover education, where a county that's not adopting the VCA, those voters aren't confused about their county not offering it yet. So thinking through how to coordinate a statewide education campaign that contemplates both educating voters about educating voters in VCA counties about those changes, as well as voters not in VCA counties. So we're thinking that through, and we'll have more to add to that in the near future. We're also reviewing education, the election administration plans from 2 counties, Napa and Nevada. Those are the first 2 counties that have put out and published their draft election administration plans. And we've actually already submitted some feedback to both those counties. They have yet to amend and update those plans, but we expect them to do so in the next month or so. We also continue to attend various community meetings or advisory committee meetings in all of the VCA counties. That helps us really give us perspective on the direct community feedback that the counties are receiving and how the counties are responding to that feedback. So it's been very helpful to attend those meetings. And lastly, we are required by law to have a task force of election experts and election officials to help us with implementation of the VCA. The task force has been up and running since earlier this year, and we cover a variety of topics from different materials produced by advocates. We review those and provide feedback, to discussing and strategizing around education and outreach. And that task force, there's roughly 20 members from across the state and different educational institutions, civil rights groups, good government groups, and county election officials. It's kind of a mini FOS, so to speak. So that's my update from the Secretary of State's office, and I appreciate the time today to provide it.
Thanks, James. Do you have time for a couple of questions?
Sure.
Great. Let me quickly scroll back. We're asking just a background question of who initially conceptualized the VCA. You can give us like a quick background on it.
Yeah, real fast. The VCA is kind of the finished product of several years of work by the Secretary of State, and even going back to when Secretary of State Padilla was in the state Senate, and trying to identify the best practices for increasing voter participation and voter registration. And so over several years of further research and negotiation and legislative process, we arrived at the Voters' Choice Act, which is very much modeled after what we see in Colorado. That also has a very similar vote center model of elections. So that's the quick and down and dirty about where this all came from. But it was a lot of painstaking compromise and negotiation that got us to what we have today.
Great. Thank you for that quick background. And we invite you to also look at the Secretary of State's website or our own Voters' Choice California website for additional background. We recorded our webinar from October 18th, and that provides some additional background on the VCA for those that want additional information. If anyone has any additional questions for James, would you please go ahead and type in your questions at this time? The question came in if, hold on a second, I have lots of questions coming in. If the Secretary of State's office is providing support only to the VCA implementing counties, or if they're also providing support to counties implementing in 2020.
So that's an interesting question. So right now we're directly focused on the 2018 counties, and the money we received in the state budget this year is focused on the 2018 counties. But the way to look at it is what happens in 2018 is going to add a lot to what the 2020 counties are going to do. We're going to create a lot of education materials that can be used by the 2020 counties. We're going to identify what works and what doesn't work so that the 2020 counties can have a better sense of how they're going to implement it in their counties. And so I think just going through the process of getting ready for 2018 is going to help the 2020 counties out a lot, because they're not going to have to go through some of these trial and error procedures of just figuring out what works best. And so hopefully it'll be a good learning experience, and we'll be able to provide good advice to the 2020 counties after we see the 2018 cycle.
Great, thank you. We're getting a question also if you can talk a little bit about Los Angeles and if they are having a hybrid model in 2020. And I know we've talked about that before, that they will be implementing just a little bit differently than other counties for 2020.
Correct. So the legislation that enacted the Voters' Choice Act has a sort of ramp-up provision for LA County. And this is due to the low vote-by-mail rate that Los Angeles currently has. It's the lowest in the state. So the idea is that you you have a sort of a longer transition into the vote center, sending everyone a ballot model. So in 2020 is the soonest that LA can adopt this model, and if they do adopt it in 2020, they would have to have a higher number of vote centers. I believe it's 1 per 7,500, as opposed to the current one, which is 1 per 10,000. And they would not send everyone a ballot. They would leave that to the permanent absentee voters today, but would also be consolidating precincts to provide more voters with that ballot in the mail. So it's a little bit of a ramp-up model, just so we can have a smoother transition for the voters in LA County to get to the full VCA model by, I believe it's 2 election cycles, so it'd be 2024.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, James. And then I've had a couple of questions that came in about how the Secretary of State's office might help public education to avoid people from perhaps voting twice or attempting to vote twice.
In terms of VCA counties, the counties will have the ability at vote centers to check if someone's ballot has been received or not. So if you mail your ballot in and you forget whether you had or not, and you go to your vote center, the county will have technology there to see whether your ballot has been received or not, and inform you of that. And so there's that sort of ability, technology-wise, to make sure voters aren't accidentally voting twice.
Great, thank you. And I will also share that there are some great resources in terms of an FAQ and a fact sheet on the Voters' Choice Act that I welcome folks to take a look at, as well as another resource to get more information about all the details to the Act. But James, I really appreciate your time to join us and give us the background, especially the great detail on all of the various materials that the Secretary of State's office is going to be putting forth. Our conversation of materials is going to be at the end of the call, but it would be great to just continue dialoguing and seeing what you all are developing and how we can complement the work that you're doing with the ideas that the group generates today as well.
Great. Thank you, Astrid.
Great. Did you have any other last-minute things that you wanted to share with the group? James, any last-minute thoughts?
No, I think that's it. Secretary of State's office is committed to the successful implementation of the VCA in 2018 and beyond. So look forward to working with everyone, and I'm always available to answer questions. So feel free to share my contact information with folks on the call.
Great. And I will say I'm getting a lot of technical questions about the VCA specifically, and I know that the call was a little bit split in terms of the background people had. I think what I'll do is I'll schedule another call that is just VCA FAQ specifically, because we're getting some pretty technical questions that I think require more than like a 2-minute response. So for those questions that I'm not getting to, I apologize for today, but we can get to them at a future date to make sure you get answers to some of those technical questions that are coming in. And thank you so much, James. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Great. So I want to give us some time to go through where the counties are, and James set us up really well to share the timeline of where counties are, and we have a few minutes before our next speaker joins us. So let me go ahead and skip ahead to the timeline. I got it, Rachel. So this slide I shared before, and just a quick overview of the VCA. There's a couple steps that need to happen. What's really unique about the Voters' Choice Act is that it's inviting voters to participate in defining what their elections should look like, and the input of the community is put into what's called the Election Administration Plan. So the election offices are developing their election administration plans, and they have to have consultations with the community to collect input on the locations of where the vote centers are going to be and where the ballot drop-off boxes are going to be. And so right now, that's the process that's happening in 3 of the 4 counties. Nevada, Napa, and Sacramento are developing their EAPs or have put out drafts. As James said, Napa and Nevada already have their drafts out. And that process is going to be happening now and into the winter. San Mateo will collect their EAP input in January. And essentially, we would want the community to provide the input during this space, but then there's also an important part to this bill, which is teaching voters that there's a new way to vote in their county. And so there's a public education and voter outreach that needs to happen also in the spring to get ready for the primary elections. And so that is the timeline that you see before you, and a rough sketch of what we hope to be doing during that phase here at Voters Choice California with our coalition. So just to provide some more detail in terms of what the counties are doing, and I think my colleagues at Voters Choice California for providing their updates to me. So Voters Choice California has local hubs that are happening in each of the counties that are implementing the VCA in Nevada, Napa, Sacramento, and San Mateo. And the VCC and partners are hosting meetings in all the counties, and if you're interested in joining these efforts, please contact us. And you see our email right before you if you're interested in joining and getting more information and plugged into the local hubs. So let me give you a couple of highlights for this. So for Nevada County, they have their election administration plan hearing is today at 6 o'clock for Nevada County, which is, today, November 14th. And they are, have, established their language advisory body and their voting accessibility advisory body. But they could also use more members. So if people are interested in getting engaged in the local VAC, the Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee for Nevada County, go ahead and email us and we can get you connected to the right people. What's interesting about Nevada County is that in addition to their LACs and VACs, they also have a third community group called the Voter Education and Outreach Committee to look specifically at those issues for the election administration plan. And in general, the EAP draft is up for public viewing and comment right now. They're going to be, the Nevada County election official will be announcing the possible locations of their vote centers and drop-off locations today to solicit that real-time feedback. And so if you are in that region, we invite you to attend the meeting or go ahead and shoot us an email. We can get you connected. For Napa County, a quick update there is that the Napa also has their LAC and their VAC, which the Language Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee, and their meetings are coming up on November 21st. They have their EAP draft up, as James shared. They actually are on their second draft of the EAP, so community members provided input on the first one. There were revisions, and now they are on their second one, which was published on October 30th. And again, if you are interested in joining the local LACs and VACs, they continue to look for more members of those bodies. So please email us, and we can connect you with that local group. Feedback on the second draft election administration plan is due by 5 p.m. on November 27th. So those plans are on their website. We also have them on the VCC website as well. And so communities right now are organizing, they're reviewing that and providing their feedback on those plans. And quickly going on to Sacramento. Sacramento, the updates I received from Sacramento were that the VAC is meeting monthly. The Election Administration Department is working on their draft outline of the election administration plan, and they're collecting public input on those sightings online, as well as information on their website has continued to improve. It's now has a great FAQ section. So if you want information on Sacramento County, we invite you to look at their website to get the latest information. Email us if you'd like to get connected with Sacramento. There's a lot of community organizations that are organizing in each of these counties, and so if you'd like to get plugged into a local effort, please contact us. I'm not getting into details right now in terms of the EAP because we have a lot of ground to cover, but again, would welcome further conversations in connecting you with the local hubs if you want to connect with a specific community group. And then for San Mateo, as it says here, as I mentioned before, their election administration plan is going to be published on January 4th, and their public meeting for comment on that election administration plan is going to be on January 18th. So community members are organizing now in these communities. Any questions on the county updates? I know I went through those pretty quickly. Great. I don't see any questions coming in, so if you do have them, go ahead and send them my way, and I'll try to get to them. If not on the live call, we can follow up later via email. So with that, I'm at time, and I want to make sure we have enough time for our next guest. We have Mindy Romero, and oh, my computer's frozen. Okay. Mindy, are you on?
I am.
We
yes,
are
I
having technical difficulties on our end, so let me, I'm trying to boot up again to get your presentation on, so I apologize.
Okay. No worries. And if we need to, I can do it without the, I can just talk without the slides.
Can you guys see our screens yet still? Can you see our screen still, Mindy? Or
I can see your VC County Update screen.
Gosh, okay. We just had our internet crash at our office building, so it should be soon. But why don't we go ahead and get started, and I apologize. But we have Mindy Romero and Laura Daly with the California Civic Engagement Project who are going to give us an overview of their Vote Center siting tool model. So Mindy and Laura, take it away.
Hi, everyone. This is Mindy, and I'll let Laura introduce herself. I want to also make sure I introduce Maria, who's our partner with DataKind. Maria, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay. So I'll let Laura introduce herself, and then Maria. People might be muting themselves. Laura, are you there? Oh, well, Maria, why don't you jump in?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Filippelli. I am a data science manager for DataKind, and we are a nonprofit organization that provides data science services to social organizations and other nonprofits. And so we are helping out Mindy and her team with the modeling behind this siting tool.
Thank you. And then I think Laura might be having technical difficulties too. So when she is able, she'll chime in. Okay, so let me know, Astrid, when you have it up on the right screen, because I'm now looking at my PowerPoint. So I'll switch over. Okay?
Okay, I think we're back on, so we can forward your slides.
Oh, you're back on.
Yep.
Okay, I have to find it now. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so I've spoken to some of you already regarding this, but I know there's a lot newer folks, or at least new to this conversation, on the line. So my name is Mindy Romero, and I direct the California Civic Engagement Project. And we are, in partnership with DataKind, developing a siting tool, siting as in location with an S, for vote centers. Some of you may know we've done a lot of research at the CCEP on vote by mail and the potential of vote centers in California. And James Irvine Foundation asked us to kind of extend that, that work and to put some of our knowledge in the field into developing this siting tool. And so it's a mapping tool designed to provide what we hope is going to be assistance for county election offices as they are thinking about locations and actually implementing the Voter Choice Act. the whole goal of this project is to help election officials make informed decisions, right? While at the same time hopefully minimizing the risks of voter confusion and any decreased participation, because we want to see all of us, of course, see the many benefits of the new model, the new voting system be realized and not lose voters, or at least hopefully not lose many voters along the way. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to show you a mock-up in a little bit here, but just to give you, kind of an overview, it's hopefully a user-friendly, web-based tool. We will be providing data and information. As I think all of you know, there are 14 suggested criteria that should be considered when citing vote center and Dropbox locations. And we are pulling together, not all of those, but most of those have data associated with them. We're pulling together those data, putting them into a website, an interactive tool, and also a data repository. So people will be able to, registrars and others will be able to go to a given county and be able to download individual data that are in alignment with the 14 criteria, such as poverty or vote by mail use, but also be able to use this interactive tool that we've modeled. We've pulled together all the data and modeled out these suggested locations. Again, I'll explain a little bit more in a moment when you see the mock-up. First and foremost, we're building this to hopefully be accessible and usable for election officials, but we very much hope that not only do we want the input of advocates and all of you in this process, but we also hope that others use it too. It's going to be publicly available, and in the end, the tool is used to inform community conversations. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go fast through this, and I should say too, I'm not sure how much time we'll have at the end, but we have a survey that Astrid hopefully will kindly send out soon to all of you, which will give them an opportunity to capture anybody who wants to give us feedback, so you can actually get that from you. So there'll be an opportunity later to be able to give more detailed feedback other than what the time allows for today. So the data can generate the maps, right, indicating those optimal location areas. There won't be, as you'll see in a moment, we aren't going to be recommending exact locations because there's so many things that go into selecting a specific site, but rather it'll be a radius. So we'll be showing as we model it out, what an equitable distribution of vote centers and drop boxes are for a county. And again, we're seeking feedback as we go through this whole process. At the very beginning, we've reached out to many people. Now today we're coming to you with our actual development plans. There's a lot of specifics we want to show you. And then as we build the tool, we'll come back for additional feedback and then feedback again as we launch it. Next slide, please. So forgive the speed here. So again, informed by consultation with all of you. Also getting feedback from the task force in just a couple of days. There's the next task force meeting. I'm a part of the task force, but kind of with a different hat on, I'll be presenting our plan here and getting feedback from task force members. And again, it's going to be a tool that's available specifically on our website, the CCAP's website. Next slide, please. Okay, so the actual model, the optimization model, I'm going to go through this really quickly. Most people that we've talked to so far don't have a lot of questions around the technical aspect of building the model, and we would really love to focus also on some of our reading and data decisions, so that's where I'll spend my time. But in a nutshell, we're creating a grid of access points across the county, so you'll be able to pull up an individual county. Each point will be scored by the indicators used, right, based on the 450 criteria, weighted based on importance, which I'll talk about in a moment, and run through a genetic algorithm. We'll select the final points. They'll serve as radiuses, of optimal locations based on their frequency in that output. And the optimal areas for vote centers and ballot drop boxes will be calculated separately, but we imagine there will be some overlap. Next slide, please. Modeling. Okay, so here is how we're handling weights, and we've had some questions as we've gone forward and reached out. Initially as we started the project, people wondering, well, what are you going to do with all of those criteria? Will you give any additional weight? And we've gotten a lot of feedback and suggestions from folks. And so what we've decided is on and again, we'd love to hear your feedback today or in the survey. But on the modeling of the vote centers themselves, variables will be weighted equally with the exception of the following. So areas of low vote by mail use, or you can flip that, and areas with high polling place use will be weighted a little bit more. Voters with disabilities, voters with limited English proficiency. We think that the bill obviously calls out both of those communities as being important to be connected with and to get their input when it comes to location selection. So we're including them with an additional weight. Areas close to public transportation stops, areas with high populations of eligible non-registered voters, and then with drop boxes, all variables will be weighted equally except for voters with disabilities and public transportation stops. And actually, we think also probably voters with limited English proficiency as well. But we're still working on some of the differences between the weighting on the drop boxes and the vote centers. Next slide, please. Assessing gaps in vote center coverage. So, first and foremost, you'll be able to go, as I said, be able to download the individual data, but most people will be coming, we assume, to the site for the interactive modeling, right, to be able to see the suggested locations. But as all of you know, SB 450 is a floor, not a ceiling, and we have had questions about, what if a county, and some of these questions have been from registrars themselves, what if they want to cite more than what the given ratio is, what the required number is based on the ratio in SB 450. And so our initial modeling will be based on that ratio that's required to write the floor. So if a county has, required 50 based on their current registration, 50 vote centers, we'll be mapping out 50 vote centers. But we also have a way to kind of hopefully give some information and guidance, some suggestions around additional locations. Because again, we've been asked about this. So once the initial modeling is done, we'll do another analysis. We'll first driven by distance. So just based on some of our own research, we know that an overwhelming majority of California voters said that they don't want to travel more than 10 to 15 minutes, distance-wise, time-wise, I should say, to a vote center location. And we've heard that in other places also anecdotally. And so we'll do an analysis after we've done our initial modeling. Based on that floor, all your communities that people will be traveling longer than 10 to 15 minutes. And then once we've established those areas that, in a sense, it's a longer distance, consider it a service gap, whatever exactly you want to call it, then we'll run the model again on those areas and produce basically another set of suggested locations. There will be a score that we won't put on the model itself, but it'll be downloadable. So, for instance, we may model out maybe 10 additional locations, but a community or a registrar thinks it can only do 2 additional locations if it wants to do that and has the resources. So there'll be some guidance based on the score. If they want to utilize that, they could, for instance, decide to look at the top 2. At the same time, though, we're going to be really careful with the language around this because we hope this is useful for people that want to, again, do more than the minimum number. But at the same time, we are going to be very careful to not suggest that, and we'd love your feedback when we actually build this and create the text around it. We don't want to suggest that because a community is scored higher, it is more important than another. And we know that many communities will want to advocate for their own community for all kinds of reasons, obviously. And so we'll be very careful about the framing. That's one of the reasons why we don't want to put the score on the actual site, but the data will be available. Anyway, so again, we'd love some feedback on that. But we're suggesting these additional locations, again, to hopefully be helpful in that conversation about where to put more when that's an option. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a mock-up. So the mock-up here is created by our wonderful colleagues at DataKind. The first thing I'll say is that it's not going to look like this in the end, of course. This is really just to give you a sense of what we're talking about and most importantly to show you the functions because we want your feedback on the functions and our survey has questions about the functions. So please don't get caught up on exactly where everything's located. But the idea is that you'll be able to go select your county, you'll see these locations, not exact locations, but area locations differentiated by vote center and Dropbox. You'll be able to put in an address. Registrars were able to put in an address, so that was based on feedback that we've gotten early on requesting that. You'll be able to, if you look at the second box below the address, you'll be able to request a certain data indicator. If you want to be able to map that, you'll be able to download the data. Next slide, please. And then all of those functions that you just saw listed on the mock-up are listed here. And I think when you send out the survey, I'll ask Astrid, if you don't mind, Astrid, to send a copy of this PowerPoint too, so you can refer to it when you take the survey if you want. But what we're interested in is, do all of these proposed functions look about right to people based on how you might use the tool or how you want registrars to use the tool? Would you suggest any additional functions? So that's really important for us to get that back from as many folks as possible. Next slide, please. Data. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over. Laura, are you on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, yay.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, hi everyone.
Turn it over to Laura.
Daly. Yep.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Laura Daly, and I work with Mindy at the CCEP. And so I'm just going to give a quick summary of the data that we're using as inputs for this model. Given the time constraints and the fact that we hope to field any questions or comments from you all, I'll just outline the data quickly. But please contact us if you have any questions regarding our calculations or if you would like more detailed information about the data sources that we're using. And so we have selected a number of data sets to represent the criteria outlined by SB 450. The bulk of these data sets are from the Census's American Community Survey, and then next slide please, actually. And we'll be noting the sources next to the data as well, so you can see which ones are not from the census. So first we're going to be inputting the public transportation data, not only presence of transit stops, but also we're including an evaluation of the frequency of service of transportation based on feedback we received early on. We're going to be including vote by mail turnout data as well as polling place voter density. Next slide. Population data, including for various subpopulations, are going to be included to represent the population centers. Populations with limited English proficiency will be included, as well as vehicle availability rates. Next slide. We're also looking at low-income communities as well as geographically isolated communities, including Native American population centers. We are also looking at commute time and proximity, or the distance and time that it takes, well, the time it takes to travel a certain distance. We're using commute data and Google Maps data to represent how long it takes to get from one point to another in the county. Next slide, please. We're including populations with disabilities as well as the eligible non-registered voter rate, looking to capture the non-registered population, and commute time. The commute time by car will be representing traffic patterns as requested by SB 450. Next slide. So these three last items are components of SB 450, but aren't necessarily represented by data sets or quantitative data sets. We have been receiving feedback from county VACs to help fill in item number 12 there, local data from voters with disabilities, and hoping to possibly highlight ideal places where maybe mobile vote centers can fill in any gaps. And then lastly, free parking is not, data on parking is not consistent or good, so that is not going to be able to be included in the model. And so that, and finally, so all these data layers will be available to the county registrars and to any user of the tool. And so that is the sum of our data inputs. Again, please contact us at the CCEP if you're interested in learning more about our data sources and our methods. In the survey you'll be receiving, there will also be a place for you to suggest additional data sources to us. And a big part of this entire process is receiving feedback from the community, and so we welcome any comments regarding all parts of this tool, but especially the data. And so now I'll go ahead and pass the mic back to Mindy, and we can get to the next slide.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura is being modest too to say that she works with me. She's actually our lead on this and very important project on the CCEP side of things. So Laura, thank you for that. Next slide. Okay, timeline. So this is abbreviated, just the most important items here for the timeline. Early to mid-November is we're doing what we're doing now, which is finalizing the tool development plan. This is our plan for how we'll develop the citing tool and getting feedback from folks, as I mentioned earlier. Mid to the end of November, we're going to build the prototype, and the building physically, so to speak, building of it will be with our partners or by our partners over at DataKind. And then early December, we'll receive feedback, as I mentioned before, on the prototype, and some vetting in terms of its functionality, again with the registrars and others, and also would love feedback on the framing and some of the language around it as well. So we'll be bringing that back to people. And then mid-December, launching of the citing tool itself. And it's something that we know we will be learning, as everybody's going to be learning, undoubtedly around the launch of SB 450, the Voters' Choice Act. We're going to be learning as we go with this tool and being really open and looking for the places where we need to be making tweaks and adjustments and that sort of thing. And we hope to really be a continual kind of feedback loop from registrars and advocates and others as we go forward. And lastly, I think actually we covered everything. I think the only other thing that maybe I'll just mention is, again, getting back to the purpose of this is, for us, it's again, to inform the conversation that this is something that UC Davis or DataKind are saying. These are the locations that should be. We know that many communities, many community groups, many advocates will want to and need to advocate for different locations that we probably suggest. But we think there's a benefit to having an independent analysis, an analysis with an equity lens, and consistent data methods, data collection methods across counties, data interpretation. As I'm sure you all know, many of the criteria are kind of open for interpretation in terms of actually how to answer that with data. So we'll have consistent data interpretation and methodology across counties. In that sense, comparability, and then hopefully going forward over time as well. But certainly, this will hopefully be informing the start of a conversation or informing conversations, and then communities will go from there ultimately and decide what makes sense for them in terms of locations. So I think Astrid just told me we have a little bit of time for questions. Is that correct, Astrid? I saw your note.
Yes. Yep, we are good with time.
Yeah, sorry. And next slide, I think Laura mentioned, and I mentioned. Lastly, survey. So Astrid and I are connecting. I'm not sure exactly which day we'll send it out, but very soon we'll send out this PowerPoint as a PDF, and to make it easy for folks, and we'll send out a link to a survey that, again, as you get it, if you could please, just from your own perspectives, in terms of the work that you do, let us know what you think about our plan, and we'll put a time in terms of getting that back to us, but we greatly appreciate it. And the survey is not a scientific survey. It doesn't have to be completed in its full. You can just answer the questions that you feel are relevant to you, because it's just really for feedback. And that's it. Next slide, I think, just says thank you.
Yep. And Mindy, we can send out that link this week. Just so that
awesome.
By the end of the week.
Awesome. So I know we have just a few minutes, but are there any kind of immediate questions. And again, you'll be able to look at the slide deck later too when it's sent out.
Yep, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel, who's been taking in questions that are coming in via the chat feature. So thanks, folks, for using the feature.
Yeah, thanks, Mindy. This is Rachel. So we have some questions coming in terms of how users will be able to interact with the siting tool. They're wondering if users will be able to pin locations to the map to see how they perform in relation to the factors.
Oh, pin locations to the map. So in a sense, I'm assuming the goal there would be to be able to see where somebody's location, for whatever reason they're interested in it, how it matches up to our suggested locations. Maybe that's the question. We haven't thought about a pinning feature, so to speak, but we will be making the data and the map available. So one set of questions we've gotten from registrars is that they want to be able to download the map and be able to put it into their systems and be able to kind of overlap right with their own analysis. So registrars will be able to do that. If advocates want to, we'll have to think about that to try to make that a little bit easier. That's why we do have the address feature. So the address, you can type in an address now as it stands, as we're planning to do this, and be able to go to that and be able to see where that address is in relationship to. So we've got some of that already planned in. Laura or Maria, do you have any comments on that?
I would just say the closest thing we have to that right now in development is the address feature, where you can type in an address and kind of see the locations around it. But we can investigate that as something that can be added.
Yeah, thanks. But thank you. That's great. That's great. That question is feedback, so thank you. Next question?
Yeah, there's a question regarding if any weight will be given to areas that are heavily populated by employees, for example, like downtown Sacramento.
Populated by employees, did you say?
So like work hubs.
Mm-hmm.
Work hubs. So that's actually something that we have been chatting about back and forth in terms of how to address work location versus home location. And right now we aren't specifically looking at work hubs. We are looking at commute time, and maybe I'll let Laura talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah,
thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so right now we're not looking exactly at worker hubs, although we are sort of exploring that for future iterations of this project. Most of that reason is because we don't have a great way of deciphering where workers are coming from. Like, for example, in downtown Sacramento, they could be coming from out of county. So we don't necessarily want to weight those areas heavily if we can't ensure that they're eligible to vote in Sacramento County.
Thank you, Laura. Next question.
Great. Yeah, that's actually all the questions we have for now. Do
folks,
if they have any additional questions, please feel free to put that in the chat box. But we don't have any more for right now. And I don't see any more coming in. So I think that will do it for us, Mindy. Thank you so much to Mindy, Laura, and your entire team for all the work that you're doing on this siting tool. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to present on this call.
Sure, and Maria too. She's on the call as well. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for giving us so much time on your agenda. Really appreciate it.
A quick question. The slide deck that we have right now, is that the one that you want us to share with folks?
Yes, actually, I might, if it goes out as a later, for everyone to review, I think we might put a few more words on it, just thinking about somebody who might look at it without the context of having the actual presentation.
Okay, so we're going to be on Friday, so just send it to us before then, and we'll make sure we include the link.
We will. I just want to review it from that perspective, and then, we'll send it along with the link. Thank you.
No problem. Yep, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Great. So now we are towards the end of our conversation and transitioning from the tool that Mindy is exploring and the modeling for Vote Center and ballot drop-off siting. The VCC has also looked at what tools can be supportive of public participation. And my colleague Rachel Sherman is going to give us an overview of some of the tools that are on the VCC website that we've been developing collaboratively with many of you. So thank you for helping us.
Yes, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So we launched our website in September, and since then we've added more materials to the site, and so we really welcome your ideas and feedback as the site continues to grow. And right now I'd like to highlight some of the resources that are currently available, beginning with our calendar of events. So this is a calendar that we continually update with things like county meetings, deadlines, events, and trainings organized by the public. And for those on the call that know of relevant events coming up soon, we really welcome you to share those with us via email or via the contact form on our website. We also have on the site a one-page fact sheet about the Voters' Choice Act, and this was developed in partnership with the Secretary of State's office. And this fact sheet we can also customize for counties to include information like a county's website, contact information, logo, or other specifics. And then we also have a frequently asked questions section on the site, and we developed this in collaboration with the county elections office, and it covers 25 commonly asked questions about the new vote center model. And so this covers topics such as how the new voting process works, when vote centers will be open, and who can cast a ballot at the vote center. And we also have some resources for community leaders on the site. And because public input is such an important component of the Voters' Choice Act, we've developed some resources specifically for this, including community review guides, which we currently have available for Napa, Nevada, and San Mateo counties. And these are meant to serve as a user-friendly guide for community members to help organize feedback they may have when going over elements of their county's election administration plan. And in line with that, we also have election administration plan checklists for Napa, Nevada, and San Mateo counties currently. And this provides a list of everything contained in the law to help community members understand all the elements that will be covered in their county's election administration plan. And then lastly, we also have resources for election officials, and this includes an adaptation of the frequently asked questions section, and this just offers some additional language for election officials when talking to the public about the Voters' Choice Act. We also have a legal compliance checklist section, and here's where we outline all the statutory requirements in the Voters' Choice Act, and these compliance checklists are available for each key component of the law. And then lastly, we have a guide to public participation for election officials implementing the Voters' Choice Act. And this guide is pretty comprehensive, and it covers topics such as lax and vax, ideas to help identify public participants, ideas to engage the public, and links to various resources available online. And so that's an overview of materials available on the site currently, and that site, for those that may not be logged onto ReadyTalk via the web, that site's www.voterschoice.org. And I also want to mention that these materials and resources were created through collaborative efforts involving members from community organizations, the Secretary of State's office, as we mentioned, and was on the call today, so thank you, and elections officials. And so we really thank and appreciate all our partners who have been so instrumental in creating these resources, and we really look forward to creating more resources in the future with partners. And again, I welcome you to take a look at the site, to go through the different pages and see what resources we have. And of course, definitely if you have any suggestions for other materials that might be helpful, we also really welcome that feedback too. And then right now, if any folks have any questions in relation to the resources, please feel free to put that in the chat box. I don't see any questions in terms of this topic for now. And we may be able to come back to it if folks think of other questions as they look at the site. But for now, I'll just go ahead and jump onto our next agenda item, which involves having an open discussion surrounding some questions regarding the Voters' Choice Act. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Astrid, who will be leading this discussion.
Thanks, Rachel, for that overview. And as you saw, there's a lot of resources that have already been developed. As I started the conversation, I mentioned how the VCA is very new. Really pioneers in the space of how do you implement this process and invite voters to participate in building their election system through the comments of the EAP. And so the tools that Rachel outlined are intended to support voters in that way. But then we also need to teach voters that there is a brand new way of voting in their county. And so I wanted to have a conversation because I know there are a lot of experts on the call that have also been thinking about this and wanted to have a conversation about what resources do you need in your community. And if you're not in a VCA county, what resources are you interested in providing? And I wanted to go ahead and open the conversation and start with that topic. I had hoped to unmute the line at this point, but Rachel, how many people do we have on the phone?
We have 54.
So there's 54 people on the call. It would be a challenge to open up the phone lines completely. I think I want to try it, and if people can mute their phone, so on your phones you should have a mute button somewhere. We're going to try this for a minute, and that way we can have an open discussion, and people can
The conference has been unmuted.
It's not going to work.
The conference has been muted.
All right, so not going to work because the phone lines are not everybody's able to mute their phone line. So let's start with the first question then, and we'll go through the chat feature, and I will, can you push it back to the agenda? Great. I will pretend I'm a radio host and see if we can manage this call. So if you do reside in a VCA county, and your community is starting to organize around voting, what type of materials or information, or what are the formats for voter education that your community would need? And then specifically thinking about, if you're an organization and you're planning to do a campaign or contact voters, what are the types of materials that you need to provide that voter education? And let me give you a couple of examples. Like, are people thinking that social media messages would be helpful? And if you do, go ahead and type in yes in the chat feature, and we can think about ways of perhaps providing messages for Twitter or Facebook or memes, for example.
Yes, we got a few yeses.
We got a few yeses. All right. So I would love it if those of you that are social media experts, unlike my stale Facebook page that I update once every couple of months, if those of you that are very social media savvy out there, would you be willing to join us in a subcommittee or a work group around developing social media messaging? And if so, please type in yes, social media, into the chat feature, and we will connect with you. I'm waiting to see if folks.
Yes.
Great. So what we will do is because it is hard to have an open discussion with nearly 60 people on the phone, we'll create some work groups from this call to focus in on some of these materials. What are some of the formats that people think? What are other formats that would be helpful for voter education and public outreach? Would you go ahead and start shooting in your messages, and I'm going to ask Rachel to go ahead and start reading some of your responses out loud.
Yeah, someone suggests a full-color two-sided postcard. And then we also have questions in terms of social media resources being available in multiple languages.
Oh, that is a wonderful question. Thank you for sending that in. Yes. So correctly assumed that all of the counties that are implementing the VCA have to abide by state and federal law around language assistance, and so the materials do have to be available in other languages, and that is one of the areas that I would love support in. If you have a language fluency or can provide your organization's language expertise, I would really value your partnership in joining us in a language subcommittee. And so if you would be interested in joining us for that, if you could type in language and then the language that you can provide in the chat feature. So for example, I am a fluent speaker in Spanish, so I would type in language-Spanish into the chat window, just to let us know of your interest in supporting communities in the various languages.
Yeah, we received Korean, Farsi, and someone also suggested PSAs for local radio stations, including English and non-English speaking stations. That's
great. And for those that have experience and can help create PSAs, go ahead and type in PSA into the chat feature. And what we're doing is, as you type in the areas that you think would be helpful in terms of public education, I'm also hoping to identify those of you that can help create and generate and support some of these resources, and if you would lend your expertise to helping implement the Voters' Choice Act, we would really value your partnership. So please include in the chat feature just what area of expertise you can contribute. We'll reach out to you. We have your contact information from the registration, and we will link it up to this note that you're sending us. Any other items coming in, Rachel?
Yeah, someone also brought up the idea of using the neighborhood app and voter commitment cards.
Voter commitment cards. That is a definitely innovative way to reach out to voters. Those are great ideas. And I love the brainstorm, guys, so please continue to send us your thoughts, and we'll read them out loud. What other ones we have?
Yes, we also have materials to distribute to K through 12th grade school, since children may be a good conduit of information to their parents. Bus posters, banners, in-language videos. Yeah.
Great. So those are great ideas. If anyone can also provide and would like to help develop some of these, please go ahead and write in the chat feature which items you will be able to help develop. So those are great brainstorm and creative ideas for formats and for social media. So right now we have a subcommittee for social media to help develop some language there. We have a subcommittee or work group for language access. What are other areas of support for those that are in Voters' Choice Act counties that you would like for your community? And perhaps we can find a partner here for you through this coalition. Okay, great. So thanks all for the ideas. I think that this is a new form for us to try to have an open discussion via chat. So I'm hoping that as we continue forming the subcommittees, we could have more open conversations. We have about 15 minutes left on the call, and I did want to provide an open space for any other items that people wanted to consider around VCA implementation. So if you have questions on a topic that we haven't yet covered, please go ahead and type in your question. Do you have another question coming in?
And a few more ideas that folks mentioned are young adult strategies to connect with high school outreach, information presentations at high school, mobile voting centers / trailers, and the importance of getting information to young adults not only via text but also an app, which seems pretty mobile generation.
Yeah, it seems like that young adults is definitely a demographic that is usually underrepresented, as we've all seen the data on the youth vote. Would there be interest in creating a subcommittee on the youth vote? If so, please type in yes, youth vote into the chat feature, and we can also create that kind of work group. And again, the goal of the subcommittees is going to be to help us think about strategies and to help us generate public education or voter education materials to help encourage these various groups to get the right information they need to participate in their new election system. Any other questions coming in, Rachel?
Yeah, we have another idea, door hanger flyers with VCA info for those groups that are canvassing door to door. And also we got a question regarding, I'm assuming maybe developing some talking points about the Voters' Choice Act, since this person seems to be fielding a lot of questions about it in terms of security and different features of the vote center model and how those are going to be implemented.
Great, that's a great idea. We do have the FAQ out there, and that is a start, but I hear you in terms of wanting to have maybe just a straight talking point document, so we can definitely work on that. Thank you for that suggestion.
And just more data on the reliability and efficiency of vote centers relative to polling precincts.
Yeah, I think a lot of that data in terms of the reliability of vote centers, I think a lot of that data is going to be collected as counties experience running their elections under the VCA model. So that will be definitely forthcoming. There's a lot of folks that are interested in just reviewing the success of this model for future implementation as well. So I know that many folks are interested in collecting that information. Any other suggestions coming in about information that people need for public education and voter outreach?
Yeah, someone's asking if the information that the subcommittees create through Voters' Choice California, if these materials will be consistent between counties, or I'm assuming will there be some customization piece?
Yeah, so thank you so much for setting up that question. It is something I should have mentioned. So one of the reasons we feel that having a statewide coalition is really important is that we can all agree on how to explain and provide education on Voters' Choice Act. And so we hope that we have, through this coalition, the opportunity to coordinate our messages, but we know that each county has a unique population, and that the communities there understand and know what messages work best for their counties. So that is why we've created some of our existing materials so that we can customize. But I think our goal is really around messaging. And I'll mention one project just as an example that I'm working on. So as I mentioned, I'm a fluent Spanish speaker, and so I started looking at Spanish translation of our fact sheet. And when I started looking at the counties, there's different ways that you can say certain terms. So something like the Voters' Choice Act, that's a new term that we've made up in the English language. It didn't exist previously, and now it means something. And so for a translation, you have different ways that you could translate something. None of them are incorrect. They all explain this term, but because it's new, there's actually different ways that you can say Voters' Choice Act in Spanish, for example. And so I'm hoping that one of the things that we can do as a coalition is come together and provide some agreement on how to talk about this as many of you engage in voter education in the coming months. So thank you for that question, and our goal is to reduce voter confusion, to share information, to share our resources, and as I mentioned earlier, I believe that this work is definitely a statewide effort, and I appreciate your partnership in this. Other ideas or questions coming in, Rachel?
Yeah, someone's asking if accessible vote-by-mail ballots could be featured in the messaging that we create and share.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I believe regulations are still being developed for accessible remote ballots, so that's definitely something that we're looking at, and thank you for raising that.
And then someone's also asking in terms of developing these materials and any costs that may be incurred as a result of that, if there could be a little bit more discussion in terms of who would incur that cost, or if it could be shared among the group.
Yeah, so I think I agree that it is expensive to launch a lot of these, especially if we're getting into placards and door hangers and banners. Right now, Future of California Elections is fronting the cost in doing this space that we're doing right now. And as an organization, we felt this was important, so we're doing this work. In addition, as I believe for many of you were on our last call, we also had a grants program, and that grant application has closed already, but we will be announcing the grantees later this month of those organizations locally that are organizing. So we're also trying to identify ways to support community organizations at the local level that want to implement in this. And that is why I think also it's important to just collaborate and coordinate. We all know that it's expensive to do public education and voter outreach, and pooling our resources together and coordinating will help us take this work deeper into the communities and making sure that voters have the information that they need to participate. And we appreciate the work that election officials are doing in implementing this work, because we know that voter education is expensive, and we want to make sure that we can partner with them and help extend that message further into communities. Other questions coming in, Rachel?
None right now.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your thinking, the brainstorming. For those that volunteered for the subcommittees, we will be in touch. Give us another week, maybe after Turkey, actually, because I'm sure nobody wants to have conference calls between now and Thanksgiving. And I just had one more question I wanted to ask that'll help us plan this work forward. So these coalition calls are starting to be large, and it's hard for us to have open discussions, but I've gotten feedback that they're useful for information sharing and to be able to know what's happening across the counties. So we are happy to continue hosting these, and we'd like your input in terms of how often we should host them. So if you could please let me know, and we will make sure we coordinate our next call. So once a month, every other month. I'm thinking.
Yeah, right now it's pretty tight between once per month and every other month. Once per month is edging out a little bit more. Every other, they're about equal again.
It's a race to the finish. Okay.
9 versus 8, 10 versus 8.
Great. So if you haven't responded, go ahead and click. It'll really help us once a month. All right. And we'll probably keep the future calls a little bit more focused and a bit shorter. We just had a lot of ground to cover today, but we wanted to reserve the full 90 minutes just in case we used it all and not go over. Okay. Once per month has taken over. We hear you, and we will continue to schedule these. So thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate your input. Keep on sending us your questions. We'll do our best to connect you to the various resources and to the hubs. As I mentioned before, there are local hubs organizing in each of the counties, and we would love to connect you with those local efforts if you are interested in participating. So with that, please continue to join us. If you want to be an official member of our coalition, we'll be posting a website with all of our partners. Go ahead and hit the Get Involved button on our website, and you can fill out the coalition survey. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Twitter. We don't have Facebook for this, under those handles. And we look forward to connecting with you again on the next call. We may take a pause in December unless we have a lot of updates that are coming in, so keep an eye out for that. We may not reconvene again until January for now. But if you have any questions or, again, efforts that are happening locally or updates that you want us to share out, shoot us an email at our website, at our email there, vcc@futureofcaelections.org. With that, I will go ahead and conclude our conversation. Thanks, Rachel, for fielding all the questions and dealing with our tech issues today. We had one more question.
Yes, folks are asking if they're located in non-implementing counties, if there's also ways that they can participate in this work.
Yes, so if you are in a non-implementing county and you'd like to support us, continue being part of this coalition. The subcommittees is a space where you can lend your expertise and let us know, what expertise you have, and we'll connect you with those efforts. And like I said, right now we're going to have a subcommittee on language access, a subcommittee on the youth vote, a subcommittee on social media messaging, and perhaps other materials. So if you're interested in any of those subcommittees, go ahead and write yes, and then the subcommittee, again, it's youth, social media, or language, and that'll let us know how you want to engage with us. And always feel free to email us. The email is on your screen at this moment, bcc@futureofca-elections.org. Thank you, everyone, for helping me live my dream as a radio personality that I never was. I hope that on our next calls we can have more live conversation. Again, apologies that we do get a lot of feedback, and we'll continue hosting these calls, and I hope that the chat feature is useful as a way to engage. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.